Am I the a-hole for telling my brother that maybe he's getting a visit from karma? I have a brother who has laid off from his software job almost a year ago. He hasn't been able to find anything since and has been complaining on LinkedIn asking people for help. He tried Uber and food delivery, but hated it. Months ago, I told him to simplify his resume and apply for retail or fast food jobs, but he keeps using his tech resume because he thinks it impresses people. After a year of searching, it's clear that it doesn't. Now he's asking if he can move in with me because he has to sell his house before it goes to foreclosure. I told him no, partly because he has always looked down on me for getting married and for neither me nor my wife having fancy tech jobs with benefits. My wife thinks he is arrogant and a player because when he was doing well in his career, he'd always bring around a different woman, and my wife had to pretend to be polite while knowing none of those relationships would last. I told my brother that he should look for a small apartment. He complained that even the cheaper apartments are around $2,500 a month now, and he feels like he'd just be throwing that money away. I explained that my house is already chaotic with 3 kids, and adding him and all his stuff would only make things crazier. He suggested he could buy a shed and store some of his things in a garage until he gets back on his feet. He also mentioned that the commute from my place would be long, but I should understand that he's already weighed the pros and cons, and he thinks he can make it work. I told him I've weighed the pros and cons too, and it's not going to work. When he sells his house, he needs to find somewhere else to live, because he's not moving in with us. He told me he'd remember this and that I didn't help him when he was at his lowest. I reminded him that I don't recall him ever helping us when we were struggling, so maybe karma is paying him a visit now. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole, but based on the way you talk about him in this post, it also sounds like you don't like your brother. I'm kinda wondering why I thought you'd let him move in with you in the first place. Maybe his ego? I don't know. Man, you definitely don't like your brother, eh? That's another reason I don't have to have him live with me. You're the a-hole. I already know I'll get downvoted, so go ahead. Look, you have every right not to let him move in with you. That's fair. You have your own family to worry about. But your question is whether or not you are the a-hole for telling him that he is getting a visit from karma. Yes you are. And you know you are, which is why you are asking the question. A non-a-hole response to his equally wrong and out-of-line comment would be, I'm sorry you feel that way. I wish I could help, but I really can't. Instead, you elected to shove a knife in and twist it. Whether or not your brother deserves this is immaterial. One is an a-hole based on one's own actions. Your actions were poor. Not the a-hole. You should have bit your tongue and not made that karma comment. But the main thing is that he cannot just demand of you what he does. It is perfectly okay if you don't want him moving in. So clearly, he is the a-hole for trying to press you to do something you don't want to do, and which would have a huge effect on your daily life and on your family. It's nicer than saying my wife can't stand his face. Next story. Am I the a-hole for taking my daughter's college fund back after she said she was going no contact? A bit of background. I'm a 45-year-old single mom of 2 kids, Ella 18 female and Jake 16 male. My husband passed away when the kids were young, and I've worked hard to support them both emotionally and financially ever since. He left behind a life insurance policy, and I've been saving part of that money for their college education. Ella has always dreamed of going to a prestigious college, and we've talked a lot about how important education is. I made sure she knew that the money I was saving for her and Jake was specifically for their education. I couldn't afford things like vacations or new cars, but I wanted them to avoid student loans. However, recently things have become difficult with Ella. She started dating a guy named Matt, 19 female, a few months ago, and I feel like her personality has changed since then. She's become distant, rude, and often dismisses anything I say. She'd say hurtful things, like that I smother her or treat her like a child. I've tried giving her space. But last week, during a heated argument, she said that once she goes to college, she's going no contact with me and won't look back. I was devastated. After everything I've sacrificed for her, hearing that she would cut me out was heartbreaking. I waited a few days to cool down, but I eventually decided that if she truly planned to cut me out of her life after college, I wouldn't continue funding her education. I told her that if she wanted to go no contact, she should consider her college fund off the table, and I would split it between Jake and myself for other things. She was furious and accused me of being vindictive, manipulative, and selfish. She believes I'm trying to control her by using the money against her. I've spoken to a few friends about this, and their opinions are divided. Some say that I'm within my rights since the money is mine to use as I see fit. Others say that I'm punishing her for her feelings and using the money to control her. So am I the a-hole for taking away my daughter's college fund after she said she planned to go no contact with me? No contact would mean no financial contact too. Why is your daughter so surprised that you'd financially cut her off when she cuts contact with you? I have this feeling the new boyfriend is stupid enough to think Opie is going to transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars to the daughter to pay for a full college degree. Money that I'm sure he has plans for, and it's not the daughter's tuition and board. That's what I thought too. He wants to cut out the other influences on her, then manipulate her to get the money. If she comes around on the no-contact approach, that's okay, but be wary of him trying to get her to wrest control of the funds in one bite. Depending on how twisted he is, they could fake a breakup, only for her to ask for financial independence a month later. This is not meant to throw shade at OP's daughter. Young love is just more easily exploited than most parents want to realize. There are two big questions here. 1. Is it the new boyfriend's influence? Or 2. Is there an ongoing underlying issue with you and your daughter that you're either not mentioning or not addressing? Of course, we had arguments in the past, but not out of the ordinary. I believe her boyfriend is a bad influence. My best guess is boyfriend knows about the fund. Let her know you have always controlled it, that you sacrificed to not dip into it, that it's never been her money, and how she thinks she could even go to college while not having contact with you about that. I'm not going to weigh in on this because I feel there is not enough context for it. But, OP, there's a good chance your daughter is being abused/manipulated. It sounds like the boyfriend is isolating her. Please keep an open mind that she might be a victim of manipulation. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my stepmom she's not an incentive for me to change my last name? My parents were never married, so I, 16 male, have my mom's last name. She passed away when I was 5. At that time, my dad was already married to my stepmom. I never really warmed up to her, mainly because I picked up on the tension between her and my mom. After my mom died, things got worse. My stepmom would say things like, "You're finally where you belong," and "I'm so happy you're my little boy now." Those comments made me feel really uncomfortable and unhappy. My dad was never very hands-on as a parent, and whenever I expressed how I felt, he would just tell me to accept being loved. 2 months after my mom passed, my oldest half-sister was born, and with all the changes, I felt really alone and sad. My stepmom was always trying to get closer to me, sometimes even hiring babysitters for an entire day so she could spend time with me to make me love her. It hurt her when I shut her out, but I hated hearing her call me hers. She would tell me that I was hers now and that I needed a mommy. She even used baby talk with me and kept doing it until I was almost 12. I think she thought it would make me warm up to her faster. She also started calling me by my middle name, James, because it was her dad's first name instead of using my first name. Sometimes she'd ask if I wanted to change my name to James and be Grandpa's Jr. I always said no. When I was around 8 or 9, they tried to change both my first and last name. The first time, they didn't take me to court, but the judge said I needed to be present. So the next time, I was brought to court and asked how I felt about the name change. I said I didn't want to change my name, so they couldn't go through with it. I kept my name, my mom's last name included. It still bothers my stepmom that I don't share their last name. She has 3 girls and really wants her only son to share the same last name as the rest of the family. A few days ago, she talked to me again, trying to convince me to change my first and last name, like they had tried years ago. She told me to do it as a gift to her, saying it would make her really happy, and I could give it to her as a Christmas or birthday present. I told her that she wasn't a reason for me to change my name because I don't want to be her son, and I don't see her as my mom. She started crying and then called me spoiled and bratty. So am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your stepmom is going to push you into going very low contact after you are of age. They ask, you said no, they need to accept this. And to then call you spoiled and bratty because you want to continue to honor your mom? Not nice. Dad too. He doesn't want to be a parent even though he has 4 kids. I don't respect that, and even less when he lets his wife get away with this kind of thing and backs her up even. Yes, he's the main reason you have to face this situation. He should grow a pair and confront his wife about her attitude. But it's so much easier to let things be and pave the way for a full no contact once you're on your feet. I'm sorry for all this. Big hugs. Not the a-hole. Your stepmom seems absolutely deluded. And your father just seems to want to go along with whatever she wants so that she can be happy, with no regard to your thoughts or feelings. They're giant a-holes for wanting to erase every part of your mother, and especially for trying to force a connection you don't want. I'm very curious, how did your father and stepmother meet? From what I'm getting, it seems like infidelity might have been involved. You're not her son. You don't want a connection with her, and them trying to change your name behind your back is scummy. Perhaps telling her the truth will finally get her to give up on this fantasy she has of you being her child. It's also interesting how quickly she was to turn on you when you rebuffed her affection. Not the a-hole. She needs therapy and needs to learn boundaries. They knew each other growing up and dated in high school but broke up before senior year. She always wanted to get back together with Dad, but before they met up again, he'd met Mom and they had me. They broke up when I was so young, but even still, I think my stepmom was so jealous that Dad had a kid before they could get back together. It wasn't hard to see she hated my mom back then. There were times she'd look so pissed when she'd see my mom. She's also jealous that Mom had a boy while she had 3 girls. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents to not include my stepdaughter in their will? I, 35 female, have 2 kids, 17, twins, boy and girl, and 1 stepdaughter, 18, when I met when she was 11. The other day, I was at my parents' house going over their estate planning, since I'm the executor. While reviewing their plan, I noticed that they had split their assets in half. 1 half for me and my 2 siblings, and the other half to be evenly distributed among their grandkids, including my stepdaughter. The estate isn't huge, but the amount each grandkid would get is still pretty substantial. Think new car money. I asked my parents about it, and they said they wanted to be fair. Well, I thought that was very generous of them. I told them I don't think it was necessary for my stepdaughter to be included, and that it would be better to split the inheritance between their 5 biological grandkids. When we got home, my husband told me he had overheard my conversation and said I was being an a-hole for excluding his daughter and potentially alienating her from the family. I explained my reasoning. My stepdaughter is the only child/grandchild/niece on her mom's side, and she's well taken care of. Her grandparents on that side own multiple properties. Her uncles are financially well off and live in a high cost of living area, and there's a good chance she won't have any cousins. Essentially, she's already set up for a life financially. On the other hand, my parents' estates would be split among 5 grandkids, and their collective net worth is significantly lower than my husband's family. I also asked him if his parents had included my kids in their estate planning, but he refused to answer. Despite my reasoning, he still called me an a-hole and accused me of not caring about his daughter's future. I believe I was just trying to be fair and look out for my kids and their cousins. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Everyone is in their feelings about it instead of looking at the actual facts. Your parents have 5 grandkids outside of her. Your parents can always leave her sentimental items. Your stepdaughter will get a large inheritance to herself. Your children aren't in your husband's parents' will. The last one being the biggest one. Why is it okay for them to exclude your children, but not the reverse? We don't support the hypocritic oath here. My mom plans on giving her a family heirloom jewelry set that is her birthstone, which I think is nice and thoughtful. It's not that I want to completely exclude her, I just feel it would be more meaningful towards my nibblings and kids. So then she's not left out. I'd ask your husband the exact question I ask. Why is he holding your parents to different standards than his own parents? Not the a-hole. You stated your opinion and it doesn't sound like you pressured them. I think your parents are kind, and it could be explained to your stepdaughter so her feelings wouldn't be hurt. Your husband needs to answer your question. Is your stepdaughter more important to him than his children with you? Does he not care about her future? If the stepdaughter's relatives' money was split with your children, it sounds like your future would be more secure. But I think it would be unfair to expect her relatives to share with unrelated children, and I would think they would not want to do so. I didn't pressure them. I just told them I didn't think it was necessary. I didn't even go into the details with them and left it at that. Nothing was changed over the course of our meeting. She is also set to receive a family heirloom jewelry set from my mom that happened to be her birthstone, which I thought was nice. And I don't expect them to share their assets with my kids. It's only ever been brought up with my husband because of this argument. I know she's set to receive a large portion, including 2 houses, because I saw some paperwork while cleaning my husband's office. It's a bit out of date, so I don't know if there's been an update, but it was drafted and I saw it shortly after he and I got married. I didn't bring it up to him then because I didn't expect my kids to be included. Last story. Am I the a-hole for suing my best friend of 13 years after he pushed me into his shark-infested waters as a prank? I, 27 male, have been best friends with M, 27 male, for 13 years, and we've always been super close. Last week, we went on vacation to a beach state, and everything was going great, until something happened that changed everything. We were hanging out near a pier, taking pictures. There were hammerhead sharks in the water, clearly visible but far enough away that they weren't a direct threat. Suddenly, out of nowhere, my friend shoved me into the water. I freaked out, screaming, thinking I could die. Thankfully, a lifeguard pulled me out right away, but I was absolutely terrified. When I got out, I saw my friend laughing and filming the entire thing. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even say a word. I just went back to the hotel, packed my things, and finished the trip on my own. Later that night, he sent me the video, still making fun of the whole thing. I felt completely humiliated and betrayed. He had literally put my life in danger for a joke. When I got home, I spoke to a lawyer and decided to sue him. I used the video as evidence and he was served papers yesterday. He called me furious, saying it was just a joke and that I'm overreacting after 13 years of friendship. So am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. He's a prick. He shouldn't have endangered 13 years of friendship by scaring the heck out of you and possibly injuring you for chuckles. I read a story some years ago about a bridesmaid who pushed the bride into a pool as a joke. Bride broke her neck and was left paralyzed. It's not funny to do pranks like that. Not the a-hole. People really don't realize how dangerous falls or pushing someone can actually be, especially with dangerous surroundings.